At 4:30 a.m., long before the sun rises over the Atlantic coast, a line of soldiers moves across a silent training field. Boots press into cold ground. Breath turns to mist. No cameras, no headlines, just preparation. This is how American military power truly begins, not in speeches, not in parades, but in quiet discipline before dawn. The story of the United States Army is not simply a chain of battles. It is a story of transformation, from a fragile rebellion to one of the most technologically advanced military forces on Earth. It began in 1775. The Continental Army was formed not from professional warriors, but from ordinary men who believed independence was worth the risk of death. They lacked proper uniforms, standardized weapons, and even food at times. Yet they stood against the British Empire, the most powerful military force of its era. Early defeats nearly crushed the revolution. New York fell. Supplies ran out, morale dropped. But George Washington understood something critical. The war was not about winning every battle, it was about keeping the army alive. Survival became strategy. At Valley Forge, during the winter of 1777 to 78, soldiers starved and froze. Disease killed more than enemy fire. But discipline was forged there. European military training methods were introduced. The Army learned structure, command, coordination. By the time the British surrendered at Yorktown in 1781, the American Army had become something entirely different from the militia force that began the war. A nation had been born, and its army had survived its first test. For decades after, the Army remained relatively small. The young republic feared standing armies. Yet as America expanded westward, conflicts grew. The Army built forts, mapped territories, and fought in wars that shaped borders. Then came the Civil War in 1861, the most devastating conflict in American history. This was no foreign invasion. It was a war within the nation. The scale was unlike anything seen before in North America. Railroads transported troops at unprecedented speed. Telegraph wires carried battlefield reports in real time. Rifled muskets increased accuracy and casualties dramatically. The Union Army grew into a massive industrial force. It mobilized millions. It built supply chains stretching across states. It mastered coordinated offensives across multiple fronts. When the war ended in 1865, more than 600,000 Americans were dead. But the United States emerged unified. The Army had evolved into a modern war machine capable of sustained large-scale operations. By the early 20th century, global power dynamics were shifting. When the United States entered World War I in 1917, it had to expand rapidly once again. Training camps appeared across the country. Millions were drafted. Equipment production surged. American forces arrived in Europe fresh and determined. In the Meuse-Argonne Offensive of 1918, over 1 million American troops participated, the largest operation in U.S. military history at that time. The Army demonstrated that it could project power across oceans. World War II would push that capacity even further. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, the United States mobilized at astonishing speed. Factories shifted from civilian to military production almost overnight. The Army expanded to over 8 million soldiers. In North Africa, Sicily, Italy, France, and Germany, American troops fought across multiple fronts. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, Thousands of soldiers stormed Normandy's beaches under relentless fire. Casualties were heavy, but the landings succeeded. It was a turning point in European liberation. In the Pacific theater, Army units fought brutal jungle campaigns. Heat, disease, and entrenched resistance made every mile costly. By 1945, the Axis powers were defeated. The United States emerged not just victorious, but dominant. Its military-industrial capacity and operational coordination had reshaped global power structures. But victory introduced a new era, the Cold War. The threat was no longer traditional invasion, but nuclear confrontation and ideological rivalry. The Army adapted again. It positioned forces in Europe to deter Soviet expansion. It refined armored warfare doctrine. It prepared for conflicts that ideally would never occur.